sometimes we can get so caught up in the pain of our own story that we just keep recycling it. And instead of it being a release, it becomes a restriction. On the other hand, there is a way that we can work with our stories that allows us to have mastery over them. So instead of our story sitting on top of us, we're able to rise above and actually stand or sit on the top of it. And I think that's the difference. And I think it's a question of how we go at it and what our objective is. Why am I telling this story? What is, how can it serve me to tell it?
So very welcome today. Again, I have a very special guest in our talk, and she has a gift, a special gift, because she can help people to become more confident, self-aware. But before I open this gift, let's have our Michale Gabriel. Very welcome, Michale. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great, Beate. I'm so looking forward to this conversation with you. This is wonderful.
It's wonderful that you are here. Yeah, we met each other in person. We just had a talk that it's so important to really meet in person. And this is what you as well do. You meet your clients as well, if it's possible in person, to work with them. But before you talk about your gift, you didn't do it all your time, all your life. So what has brought you to the point to help people to heal themselves? So I would like to call it like that. And what was your journey?
Mm. Well, it was a long journey, Beate, but it started. I was born and raised in Alaska. I'm a third generation Alaskan. When I was a little girl and I always loved to read, I was very curious about the meaning of things. And there was a storybook that we had as children called Igloo Tales. And it talked about how why the bear had a short tail, and how the aurora borealis, the northern lights, came to be in the sky. And I remembered thinking how special that was, that I couldn't look at a mountain range or a river or an animal without knowing something about the story that was behind it. But the real key for me came, I had I had gone to a workshop. We had done some very unusual things for me at that time. We were drumming, and we were talking in nonsensical languages. We were doing all kinds of things. It was with the futurist Jean Houston, and this was in Seattle, Washington, where I lived for many, many years. And about a few days later, I was running backwards up a hill by my house, because she had said that if you run backwards up a hill, you get more brain connections. And I had thought, well, I want as many brain connections as I can possibly get. And then I was in the backyard and I was meditating. And all of a sudden, this image came to me. And it was an image of a globe. And there were hands holding it up. And above the globe were the words, peace through story. And it was so powerful. It literally reverberated through my whole body. And I came out of that meditation knowing that my role in the world was to help create peace through storytelling. And Beate, I wasn't unfamiliar with story. I had a master's degree in library science. I was a former director of Children's Public Library Services. I, at the time, had just completed a $2.8 million campaign for the University of Washington School of International Studies. And what did we do? We used story to enlist and enroll all sorts of new donors to the program by telling our story. But this was different. This was different. This was me stepping out in faith that what I was to do in the world was to help create peace through storytelling. And it was up to me to figure out, what did that look like? And how was I going to do that? but it came from such a deep place inside of me that I knew it was my next step.
Wow. So when did that happen?
Oh
Because
my.
oh my gosh.
Well, it was over 40 years ago now. It was
Yeah.
over 40 years ago. And at that time, Beate, my logical mind said, well, gosh, maybe there's, and because my background was in education and working with children, of course, as director of Children's Public Library Services, I knew something about bringing stories to life in literature. So, but at the time, there were no school districts hiring storytellers, and there was no resident storyteller program. So it really meant that I needed to just try different things, to see what works. So initially, the first 15 years, I was engaged in bringing literature to life, helping children to become storytellers and teachers and librarians, really across the United States. And and so that was the beginning, but that was just the start because for me it was always how can we apply this powerful thing called story in different arenas? So it started in education, then it moved to international diplomacy, then it moved to working with children who are critically and chronically and terminally ill in a hospital setting, to then working in the corporate arena and now doing that and also working with entrepreneurs. So it's really been for me a journey around how can I work in these different spaces and help people to find their voice and to be able to communicate what they have to share, their wisdom, in a meaningful and effective way so that they can have an impact where they're being called to have an impact, and I can support them in doing that.
That's wonderful. So when I think about story, I just thought every every person has maybe so many stories because of experience or because of trauma or because of car accidents or accidents, and it's not normal to do a story or to tell the story without recalling always the bad experience, but to extract what I have learned out of it, or the feelings and the emotions which I never expressed. Is this a way you work as well, so that somebody can release everything what he's suppressing all years, or how do I have to see it?
Beata, that's such a great question. It's such a great question. Thank you for asking it. Because you're right. Sometimes we can get so caught up in the pain of our own story that we just keep recycling it. And instead of it being a release, it becomes a restriction. On the other hand, there is a way that we can work with our stories that allows us to have mastery over them. So instead of our story sitting on top of us, we're able to rise above and actually stand or sit on the top of it. And I think that's the difference. And I think it's a question of how we go at it and what our objective is. Why am I telling this story? What is, how can it serve me to tell it? And I was remembering a woman I worked with in a corporate setting. My work has been a part of some gold standard leadership programs, cornerstones of them. And I remembered one woman I worked with had people kept saying to her, "You would be a fantastic manager." And she said, "No, no, I can't." And when I began working with her, come to find out, she had been in a nonprofit board, had had a very difficult board member, had tried all different strategies to try to make things work in that environment, ended up leaving the environment and thinking she had failed. And thinking, well, if I failed there, how could I possibly be a manager of people? When we began to dig down into that story, there was so much there that she had overlooked that demonstrated incredible leadership capacity. And she didn't even know it. And so part of my work, particularly because I've told people stories for many, many, many years, is would tell her story back to her in our sessions, what I was hearing. And she was like, what? What? So when she was able to actually tell that story as part of a year-long leadership program that I was a part of, and actually, as I would say, have mastery over it, meaning to come out from under and then speak that way, what she experienced was a transformation within herself. And she knew now that it was only the way she'd been telling her story that held her back. And that because she started telling it in a new and different way, she ended up, when an opportunity came to be a temporary manager, she took it. She signed up for it. She would have never done that before. And then she ended up being offered a management position, dearly loved by the people that she worked with. And so there you have it. You know, her story was restricting her, but she had to tell it and find another way, another lens of looking at it for her to be able to master it and see the potential that was there, all the learnings that she had acquired that would make her a fabulous manager, which indeed she became.
Yeah, this is wonderful because this is really embracing the own gift.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you always have, I think we all have to have a person next to us who
Yes.
sees us. And
Absolutely.
I just get the information from you. You know, you are so present, you are so aware that you see the person, and therefore what you just said, you retell their story. This is very interesting.
Yeah.
So how does this work?
Well, it actually it came to me, you know, Beyonce, I didn't ever, well, of course, remember, I started out the first 15 years with my background. I brought literature to life. So I was not memorizing a story out of literature. I was actually retelling it in a storytelling way because it's a different medium altogether than the written word. You have facial expression, you have pacing and timing and all sorts of things that available to you as a teller that is not there in the written word. Yes. So I would retell something, and what I would notice is that I would always pay attention as I was working with children primarily and teachers and educators. And so I would notice where kids were leaning in. But most importantly, I would pay attention to afterward, out in the parking lot as I'm putting the books back in my car, that I would hear a child say, Mom, Mom, the storyteller came today. Her name was Michelle, and she told us a story about, and the child was retelling the story to the parent. And that's how I knew that the way I was crafting those stories was sticking to the child. In other words, I was telling them in a way to allow the child in with their imagination and to allow them to envision it in their own mind, because to the extent that they could, both imagery and emotion, that enabled them to retell. And so the nugget, the message in that story had a chance to stick. Had a chance. So I always paid attention to the stories I was telling. Was I telling a story that could be of value to a child, to an adult, whatever? Then I began to tell people stories like from a stage. I would interview someone, and when I would tell their story from a stage, let's say it's for fundraising, I was involved in a keynote at the Boeing Company to raise $26 million from Boeing employees. This was way back years ago. I had two responsibilities. One, this story that I was telling about this person who had learned how to read and write just 3 years prior because of a program that he had participated in. It was a recipient of one of their gifts from the Boeing Company. But I also was carrying that person's life in my hands too in the telling. So whenever I tell someone's story, I have an obligation to that person to allow them to see themselves in a way that they haven't seen themselves before. So standing on that stage, and he was in the audience, and I knew that I had an opportunity to mirror to him the magnificence of who he was. And I knew also from interviewing him that he had so much pain in him from being bullied and made fun of for his inability to read and write. And he was brilliant because he could figure out computers and make something work, even in a work environment. I wanted him to see that. And so not only did that story move people in the room, because many people have dyslexia, it's a common thing. And his story of courage touched them, moved them, caused them to want to donate, which was the point of the whole thing. But to have him say to me after, I've never looked at my life like that. You make me grateful even for the painful moments. And Beate, for me, that's what matters. If I can help another person through my ability to ask questions and to dig deep and to find the nuggets of their experience that can allow them to see themselves in a new way, a transformational way that can enable them to say yes to life in a way that perhaps they haven't before, then I know that that meditation, Peace Through Story, and I didn't know it at the time, Beate. I thought it was, I went to the Soviet Union 9 times, to Iraq, to Uganda, all these places. But what I have come to understand now at this age, I'll be 79 in June, that the most important thing that we can do for another person is to help them find peace with their own story and to be able to see its potential and offering them new opportunities for their own life.
This is a wonderful way. This is a wonderful way to reconnect to the aspects of the soul. This is what I just get. This is what I just feel. And we are always as well saying, if you want to live, you have to feel. And if we don't get in contact with our pain, so we suppress pain. And so with suppressing these emotions, we are not open to receive the joy as fully as we could. So this is a wonderful work that somebody goes over a trauma and find himself.
Yes, yes. And Beate, I mean, this is your work too, right? It's working with energy, which is why I so admire what you do. Because I think that the truth of it is we all gone through trauma. The question is, how do we hold it? And does it become a source of wisdom, a source of insight, a source of, I remembered, and I had a very traumatic childhood growing up, and my mother, I used to say, oh dear God, don't let her die without us doing some healing work. And we did that the last 2 weeks before she crossed over. And I remembered at one point she said to me, she said, your soul picked me out to be your mother before you came here. And I said, Mama, you're right. You're right. Because I would not be the person I am today, and people could not relate to me and open up to me and trust me with their deepest, thoughts and feelings if I hadn't have gone through everything that we went through together. And she was and is my greatest teacher. And that we were gifted the opportunity to ask forgiveness from each other before she made her way on the other side of the veil. I used to say I was 42, so it was many years ago. But that's really laid, I think, for me, the foundation of the power of story and of our recognizing in each and every moment we're creating a new story. And the question becomes, what do I want it to be? How do I want to go through this experience? What do I want to be able to say after? And when we start thinking in those ways, we approach a situation differently because of the story we want to tell as a result.
Yes. So from your experience, when we have many stories,
yes,
at the end, does it lead always into one corner, one core point, so that every story has nearly a similar aspect of the soul, which is wants to be healed, or are there different aspects? Do you know what I mean?
I think so. Let me try. And if I miss the mark, you tell me, and I'll keep going here. I'll keep digging. But that's such a good question. You know, you're right, Beate. We are comprised of many stories. And I think that's maybe the joy of this, because we have, I would say, a core story, a kind of signature story. And I think we need to understand that and explore that and uncover that and speak about that. I think that's essential for our just for our sense of groundedness. But then on top of that, we're so multidimensional that I think the other side, sometimes what we can do, we can end up limiting ourselves because we think, well, this is who I am and this is my story, and this is what I'm, rather than the magic of saying, and what else is there yet to explore within myself that I can add another layer, another insight. And it's like what you do, it's like, well, all right, I'm gonna, in your case, go to Antarctica here shortly, because what can I grow and learn from that? And it's that curiosity and recognition that you're never limited by a single story that frees you, I think, to say yes to a new experience.
Yeah, it's a time to say yes. Now,
I
now
agree.
is the time to say yes. Say yes to yourself, say yes to all your stories, and
Yeah.
with your help, everything can unfold and you can free yourself. So when you work, when somebody comes to you now, for example, I come to you and say, Michale, please, I know you're doing storytelling work, So how can you help me to find my story?
I love that question. You know I do. Well, I ask some questions about that because I need to understand what your intent is. Is it that you want to find your story just for you? Are you engaged in something where you want to be able to tell your story to others? Is there something that you want to be able to engage in, that being able to tell so once I'm clear about, I wouldn't say the end result, because it sounds too from the head, not the heart. It's, let's explore what that is for you. And then as we work together, and I work with clients, sometimes 3 months or 6 months, some people come to me because they have a presentation, something that they need to do in a certain amount of time, and they want to be able to, for us to uncover that core story so they can tell it. So we get clarity around the intention. But then it's a matter of going through the process of, in my case, asking a lot of questions, starting to pull the bits out to see what the potential is, to understand where you're going with this, where you want to go with this, so that I can support you. Because sometimes, Beate, we have so much story that we get lost in it, or others get lost listening to us. So if we're clearer about where we want to go with it or what we would like to do with it, there's always the magic and the mystery. So it's never from here to here to here to there, which is why I do very custom work with people. But it is important for us to kind of understand what I'd like to be able to have people get from my story, so that we can, like anything, it's like writing, right? There's a point we do the editing process. Sometimes we have to edit out scenes so that the core of our story and the impact can be accomplished. And if we have too many scenes or too many side journeys, the power of our message gets lost. It gets diluted. So for me, as a listener and as a coach and a mentor, my job is to help uncover those key moments that we need to elevate in the telling, so that the listener now has the opportunity to step inside of our story with us and to feel what they feel, to envision what they envision. Because to the extent that we invite the listener in and allow them to explore the story with us within their own imagination, the potential of them leaving with a nugget that then they can use and explore in their own lives is greatly enhanced. So it's a combination in a response. It's a long-winded response to your question, but it is important to understand where I want to go with this. Sometimes it's just I want to understand it for me. That's wonderful. But oftentimes people come to me because there is something they want to go and do, participate in, or as leaders, we want to be able to communicate with our teams what we're about. Our, we can list our values in a bullet point, but that is not going to touch people. But if I have a story to wrap around those points, a series of stories, it's going to help people better understand who I am, what I'm about, what I offer you, what I'm here to contribute, what I would love for us to do together. Does that?
Yes, perfect. Yeah, absolutely perfect. Because I know it from me as a person that I have a similar age than you. I'm 72 now, and there are so many stories, and it depends on the character you have, the personality. So I am the one who's as well jumping around, and I know that then if I'm not clear, the message is
Yes.
not there, is not delivered. So your work is, for example, helping me or helping the people to get clarity. And I just get a sense when I get clarity on one story, I don't mix it up with another story.
Mm.
So when I separate the stories, each part of it, then I can digest in another way. This is what's just unfolding for me.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And Beate, because you work with folks and you work in leadership and you do all of these things, I think especially as leaders, or we work with people over time, we need more than one story. Because like anything, we want to keep refreshing the message, right? If we have the same story all the time, then people can sometimes stop hearing.
Mhm.
And so part of it getting clear about what are the messages that I find myself kind of consistently speaking to, and what are different stories that I can tell depending on who I'm with and the situation and the length of time I have in order to refresh this idea so that I'm stimulating the imagination of the person I'm talking with and I'm offering them something fresh for them to ponder over or reflect on or to digest. And ministers and rabbis and that's what this is about, right? It's coming at something from different angles so that we give a person a chance to go, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's the core, and then and so you're right. Having an understanding of what kinds of stories we need also means, Beate, that we're paying attention to those as well. So as we're interviewing with people or we have an experience, we're looking at it as the experience, but also like, is there a story here that I can extract that might be useful in my work over here?
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love it. I love your work. It's wonderful. It's open and it's precise at the same time. So you help people unfold, but you give them as well, I think, a structure how to do it. Yes, that they feel safe in your environment. I think this feeling safe working with somebody is the most important thing.
Yes. Completely. Thank you for saying that we do have to trust that we're not going to open up and we're not going to share something if we don't feel that that person's going to hold our story, our life as sacred.
Mhm.
Why would we do that, right? And we've all had the experience of, I think, entrusting someone with something and having it not be received in the way we hope. So it does make us a little bit guarded, which is why I think the more that we investigate our own lives and our own stories and are clear about our own suffering and our own things that we've had to overcome, it makes us, I think, much more human and much more relatable. But
Yeah.
you're right, there has to be the safety, and we have to be able to make agreements with one another as to what we're going to do. And that's how I've always found when someone entrusts their story with me, it doesn't go anywhere and without that person's permission. And I really do have to continually know that, that is a sacred trust and we need to honor it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. So you work with people one-on-one, you work with people as well in groups online. Do you
Mhm.
have a special program where everybody can sign up? So how are your modalities?
Well, Beyonce, on my website, there is an opportunity to have a discovery call with me and explore what would serve best. I have done online teaching. I don't have at the moment an online class scheduled. However, I do have some groups who come to me and say, can you offer it to us as a group, for example? Or I have a group that wants to, that self, determined so that they say, can you come and do something for us? And I do a lot of that kind of thing where, because then I can curate it for that particular audience. And I love working that way because I don't work with a cookie cutter approach. It's very customized. I've always been like this. And I currently have even some companies that are looking at developing their own leadership programs. And I've been a part of 4 gold standard programs in the United States and in India. And looking at how can we help people who are part of this organization communicate effectively. How can we give them their own story? I mean, by give them, I mean uncover their own story and create an environment where people are sharing that so that we can truly see each other. It goes back to what you said earlier, Beate. If we can't see one another for the wisdom that we bring to the table, and in my work in corporate, this has been a very powerful part of the work of over 28 years now, of helping people to share deeper stories with one another so that you can say, oh my gosh, I am so blessed to be in the company of this person. And I see what they've been through and I see what they've done with their lives. And I also know that no matter what challenge we're faced with in this organization, given what people are coming with, we're going to be able to manage this. We're going to be able to put our heads together and we're going to be able to solve this. Why? Because I know your story and you know mine.
Yeah,
That's powerful.
powerful. It's a way, it's a way of appreciation and
Yeah.
it's a way of love. But in
Yes.
company content, you don't talk about love. Talk about
Well,
appreciation.
we're doing your work and mine. We get them there, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, we tell them, you don't know what's coming. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know
Good.
what our clients say? I know yours do too. I had a client say, Michelle, I've worked in this company for a lot of years. And he said, I felt like my heart had just been silenced. And
Yeah.
that's why he said it's been so hard to work with you because he would sometimes even leave my office slamming the door because I would say, you're not in your heart. I can tell, no, I know this is a people vision here. I want to know about your people. We got to go there. And when he did, he broke through. It's like he re-threaded a part of himself that he had lost. And that's what you do in your work. That's what I do in mine. And it's like giving a person a gift of themselves back to themselves.
Yeah. It's it's really, it's the soul alignment. It's really being aligned, heart and mind and everything. And with that, we can connect to the greater wisdom. And then intuition comes and everything is much more easier in life, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I want to say one thing to you. I know this is your interview, but I have to tell you, it was such a joy to meet you in person, Beyonce. And what's thrilling to me is to see women like yourself and myself too, in our 70s, into our 80s, contributing and taking the wisdom that we've accrued over our lives and being able to offer it up to those younger generations that are coming behind us that are in need of the wisdom that we have acquired. It's so gratifying to me, and that was such a joy to meet you in person, because I just sat there and with you and your husband Martin, and I thought, I am so grateful to be here. Like, I'm looking at a wise sister and
Yeah.
so appreciative of what you are bringing to every situation that you come to, and how people are benefiting from your gifts, and that we in our 70s and our 80s and beyond have so much relevancy, which I think sometimes in the culture we live in, we can forget that we do, or we can lose track of that we do, and we do. And I was reminded of that sitting with you, because that's what I was receiving from you as you were sharing with me.
So wonderful. Thank you so much. This is a gift to me as well. I appreciate, love it. Yeah, Michelle, I always ask two final questions. And before we come to the end, I always ask, what is it? What do you wish for the world? What do you want for the world? And secondly, what is it? What you wish for yourself?
Well, what I would wish for the world, especially in the time that we are in, that people are able to begin to really see each other as part of the human family, and that we allow ourselves to cross the divide that we are currently in and put our hands together as a global community, recognizing that that is the only way that we can heal this earth, is by reaching out and healing our relationships with each other. And for me personally, I have only one desire, and that is that before I cross over the veil, that the gifts that I've been blessed with are fully and completely utilized and fulfilled. There's a wonderful saying, and I've embraced it for very many years, and it is, today is a good day to fly and a good day to die. And, being a world traveler, Beate, it's always a good day to fly because you're going someplace incredible. But I want each day to also be a good day to die. And what that means for me is that I'm so filled up. My heart is so full that I am ready to go. And so I want more days like that.
Yes. You are not ready to go. You stay with us.
Not yet.
Yet.
I've got a few things to do. Yes, ma'am. That I know. That I
Oh,
do.
Michelle, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. It was such a pleasure to have you here and to talk with you again.
Thank you. Well, I feel the same. My heart is very full. You're a blessing to me, Beate, and I just look forward to getting to know you better. And I just embrace you and your work and your contribution. So this is a gift to me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey and tell others about this channel. And please subscribe.